I'd just like to say that Carole and I are absolutely delighted by today's announcement.
Think you know the real story behind the palace walls? Think again. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly why Queen Camilla was left in tears, and it has nothing to do with what you've heard. Before we go any further, hit subscribe, because this story is far from over. In a royal world where every move is calculated and every word carefully chosen, no one expected this, especially not Queen Camilla. Carole Middleton, mother of Princess Kate, once considered a quiet presence in royal affairs, the woman they call Super Granny, has made a bold and deeply personal decision that's sending shockwaves through the palace. Insiders say Queen Camilla was left completely blindsided, brought to tears by what unfolded behind closed doors. What exactly could Carole have possibly done to cause such an emotional reaction? Let's find out. But before we get to that briefcase, and trust me, we'll get there, you need to understand how it all started. Because this story didn't begin in 2025, it began more than a decade earlier, long before the tears, long before the reckoning. It started back in April 2011, the day Kate married Prince William. On the surface, everything seemed perfect. Carole Middleton and Camilla, Duchess of Cornwall at the time, smiled politely in public, exchanged greetings, posed side by side in family photographs. But behind the scenes, something else was happening, something subtle, unspoken, yet impossible to ignore. Carole had carved out a life of comfort and success through sheer determination. Daughter of a builder and a retail worker, she had worked as a flight attendant before building party pieces, a thriving party supply business, alongside her husband Michael. That business helped send all three of their children to some of the UK's top schools. She was proud of the life they had created, one shaped by effort, not entitlement. But inside Buckingham Palace, tradition ran deep, and not everyone looked kindly upon her middle-class background or her growing influence. As Kate and William's relationship became more serious, Carole noticed small but sharp changes in how she was treated at royal gatherings. While some extended warmth, others offered cold shoulders and sidelong glances. She would later describe the experience as being treated like she wasn't even there. A message that needed no words. It was a stark contrast to Camilla, born into the aristocracy, fitting seamlessly into the royal mold. She understood the unwritten codes of rank and hierarchy, and reportedly spoke often about the significance of lineage and knowing one's place. Tensions deepened during the lead-up to the royal wedding. Carole hoped to add personal touches, subtle, meaningful gestures from the Middleton side, but many of her ideas were brushed aside without much conversation. Decisions about flowers, the guest list, all taken out of her hands, reinforcing the idea that her role was to smile, nod, and stay in the background. After the wedding, those tensions didn't fade. They grew quieter but stronger. Carole began to notice her access to Kate changing. Visits became less frequent. Private time was interrupted or rescheduled. Christmas, once a cherished family tradition, became a point of contention as royal protocol demanded Kate and William spend the holidays at Sandringham. It was a difficult shift, not just for Carole, but for Kate too. She was now navigating two very different worlds, the structured, demanding realm of the monarchy and the warm, grounded embrace of her family. Trying to keep both sides happy was wearing her thin. Then came July 2013, the birth of Prince George. As a devoted mother and experienced parent, Carole naturally wanted to be closely involved. But the palace had other plans. Royal nannies were selected, strict schedules enforced, little room for the hands-on grandmother Carole hoped to be. Some believed Queen Camilla quietly supported these restrictions, an effort to keep the Middleton influence at bay. By the time Princess Charlotte was christened in July 2015, the cracks had widened even further. Carole had planned a small private celebration, something intimate and meaningful, but at the last minute, her plans were reportedly overridden by Camilla's office, causing confusion and disappointment. What was meant to be a tender family moment turned into yet another reminder that her presence in royal affairs was carefully controlled. And so, beneath the surface of royal smiles and stately appearances, a quiet rivalry was unfolding, one built not on public scandal, but on years of quiet rejection, unspoken judgments, and a struggle for space in Kate's increasingly royal life. But what did Carole do to send Camilla spiraling? And could this moment truly upend the royal family? Keep watching because we're just getting started. Remember that birthday party moment we mentioned? This is where it comes back. The air at Princess Charlotte's christening had barely settled when Carole's quiet retreat began to take form. What had once seemed like a subtle effort to maintain harmony was now being replaced with something far more deliberate. Carole made a decision that would over time shift the very fabric of her family's relationship with the palace. Though she remained publicly poised, she began to distance herself from royal life in ways that were both graceful and strategically calculated. Insiders noticed her absence from events where she once stood proudly by her daughter's side. Her decision, while quiet, carried the weight of defiance. It was not about rebellion. It was about reclaiming space in a world that had for too long treated her as an unwelcome guest. The years leading up to this had been taxing. From 2011 onward, Carole had been navigating a realm that was not just unfamiliar, but resistant. Royal traditions clashed with her grounded, modern family values. And while she had never sought the spotlight, her presence became a subtle threat to the traditional order. A reminder that influence could be earned, not just inherited. By 2013, with the birth of George, this clash had grown sharper. Carole's expectation of being a hands-on grandmother was dashed by rigid nursery protocols. Royal nannies took precedence. Her offers of help were brushed aside. Scheduling visits became a complex negotiation. Her efforts to maintain normalcy for her daughter and grandchildren were constantly met with resistance. This wasn't just about class, it was about control. Queen Camilla, herself once an outsider, appeared to have embraced the very establishment that had once resisted her. Over the years, she reportedly became a strong voice for preserving tradition, encouraging strict adherence to royal customs. In doing so, according to royal observers, she positioned herself in subtle opposition to Carole's influence. The result was an unspoken rivalry, both mothers, both fiercely protective, but from very different worlds. The tension reached new heights around Prince Charles's 70th birthday in November 2018. Held at Buckingham Palace, the event brought together the royal family and their extended networks. The Middletons, as always, kept a dignified presence. But the tone of the evening reportedly shifted when Carole overheard a conversation between Camilla and a group of her longtime aristocratic friends. As they chatted about Britain's changing elite, Camilla reportedly made a pointed remark about new money and the importance of heritage over financial success. No names were mentioned, but the implication was clear to those who understood the family dynamics. To Carole, it felt like a final, sharp reminder. No matter how hard she had worked, how carefully she had raised her daughter, or how gracefully she had navigated royal expectations, she would always be considered other. For Carole, that moment wasn't just humiliating, it was clarifying. What followed was not an outburst or public spectacle, it was a quiet shift. She pulled back from royal appearances, ceased trying to insert herself where her presence was no longer welcomed, stopped pushing for invitations, stopped offering suggestions that would inevitably be ignored. Instead, she focused on her own world, her business, her community, and most importantly, her family in the way she could still access it. But behind closed doors, Carole was not idle. According to several well-placed sources, she began keeping detailed notes of every interaction that reinforced her marginalization. Every time a visit with her grandchildren was canceled. Every time a family plan was altered without her input. Every time she was quietly excluded from a milestone in her grandchildren's lives. More intriguingly, through her network of business and social contacts, built during decades of entrepreneurial success, Carole began to learn things. Not gossip, details. Financial decisions, property management choices, odd patterns of spending. Nothing scandalous on their own, but together, they painted a broader picture of how influence and access were exercised within the palace. And in the hands of someone as discreet and organized as Carole Middleton, these bits of information became powerful. By early 2024, the quiet friction between the Queen and Carole was becoming visible to the public eye. In March of that year, at Prince Louis' school concert in London, royal watchers couldn't help but notice the atmosphere. Carole and Camilla, once photographed side by side, stood at opposite ends of the room. Not a glance, not a smile, not even a courteous exchange of greetings. Prince William, ever the peacekeeper, was seen circulating between the two women to ease the visible tension. But the distance between them was unmistakable. This event wasn't isolated. It was the culmination of years of silent battles, unspoken judgments, and calculated distance. And yet, through it all, Carole had remained composed. She had never spoken publicly, never allowed herself to become a headline. But her silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. Still, the emotional weight was undeniable. Watching other royal grandparents, like Camilla's own grandchildren, be warmly included while she struggled to secure time with her daughter's children was a painful contrast. Despite Kate's best efforts, the pressures of duty continued to chip away at the bonds that once made her family feel whole. And while Carole never voiced her frustration publicly, her actions spoke volumes. Her slow withdrawal from palace life was not a retreat. It was a quiet protest, a refusal to be treated as anything less than an equal partner in the lives of her grandchildren. A stand not for status, but for respect. As 2024 unfolded, palace insiders noted an increasing frostiness in the Queen's behavior toward Carole. Invitations were fewer, interactions more formal. Even Kate, who had long navigated both worlds with remarkable poise, appeared increasingly torn, pulled between her royal role and the growing isolation of her own family. Behind the scenes, Carole's efforts continued, not to retaliate but to document every slight, every shift, every quiet move that revealed more about how the palace wielded its power behind polished appearances. It wasn't just about personal pain anymore. For Carole, it was about legacy, about ensuring that her family's story would not be written solely by palace insiders. She had raised her daughter to be strong, compassionate, and poised under pressure. And now, as Kate stood at the heart of a monarchy constantly evolving, Carole was determined that the values she had instilled wouldn't be erased by titles or tradition. But what did Carole uncover that left Queen Camilla in deep tears? And who else is entangled in this? Keep watching, because this is where the story takes a turn nobody saw coming. Beneath the polished surface of palace protocol and carefully staged smiles, something deeper has begun to stir. What started as a mother's quiet concern now threatens to upend the delicate hierarchy inside Buckingham Palace. And at the center of it all, Carole Middleton. For over a decade, she's been the elegant in-law, the party planner, the picture of discretion. But on a cold morning, February 6, 2025, Carole arrived at Buckingham Palace with no press, no aides, and a briefcase in hand. What followed, insiders say, wasn't a friendly chat. It was a reckoning. Sources close to the palace claim Carole's visit wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. Inside that leather briefcase, documents, real ones, financial records, timelines, names. There's been no official word on the contents, but whispers have swirled around off-the-record meetings in Switzerland, bank transfers routed through shell companies, and a slow but deliberate effort to edge the Middletons out of the royal inner circle. What Carole brought forward wasn't simply about money, it was about influence. Over the past few years, subtle shifts had taken place. Missed invitations, family moments quietly excluded, royal roles reassigned with no explanation. Viewed separately, they seemed like nothing. But together, Carole saw a pattern, and she wasn't going to let it continue unchecked. And the alleged orchestrator of this shift, Queen Camilla. Those present at the meeting say Camilla's reaction was uncharacteristic. The Queen consort, usually composed, reportedly left the room visibly shaken. One insider even claimed she was seen in tears after reviewing part of the material Carole presented. The implication wasn't just financial, it was personal. A reminder that Carole, long underestimated, had been quietly observing and documenting everything. Within hours of Carole's visit, things inside the palace shifted. Meetings were rescheduled. Senior aides, some long retired, were called back in. Royal engagements were postponed without explanation. The palace issued no statement, but the silence only fueled speculation. Camilla disappeared from public view for 10 days. When she finally returned on March 11th for Commonwealth Day, her usual confidence was replaced with something quieter. Body language experts pointed to a more withdrawn presence, fewer staff, briefer interactions. The Queen consort had not been publicly shaken in this way before. Meanwhile, the staff inside the palace seemed divided. Those close to Catherine viewed Carole's actions with sympathy. Others, especially traditionalists loyal to Camilla, saw it as disruptive. But the mood had clearly shifted. There was caution in the halls of Buckingham Palace now, whispers instead of conversations, glances instead of greetings. Even Prince William, known for his steady composure, seemed caught in the middle. Insiders say he began consulting advisors who once worked with his mother, Princess Diana. The symbolism wasn't lost. Diana had once faced her own battles behind the palace walls. Now, royal watchers wondered, was this Kate's Diana moment? The media picked up the scent. Why had royal appearances suddenly gone quiet? Why the uncharacteristic gaps in schedules? Even businesses with royal warrants were said to be reviewing their affiliations. Nothing concrete had been proven, but the timing was too sharp to ignore. Carole Middleton made no public comment. She returned home without speaking to reporters, without posting a word. But her silence spoke volumes. She didn't need to raise her voice. She had already made her point. For the first time in a long time, the palace felt unsettled. Not crumbling, just uncertain. And that uncertainty, in a family built on control, might be the most dangerous shift of all. No one knows exactly what Carole plans next, but those watching closely understand one thing. She didn't just walk into Buckingham Palace that morning to raise concerns. She walked in to remind the monarchy that she was not just the mother of the future queen. She was a force of her own. And if the tearful exit of Queen Camilla is anything to go by, the message was received. Something else was quietly taking shape behind the scenes. A reckoning was coming, and this time it wouldn't be contained to hushed corridors or buried beneath royal smiles. Now all eyes turned to what happened next behind closed doors after Carole Middleton walked out. If Carole's visit signaled the start of a reckoning, her daughter Catherine is now the quiet force guiding where it all leads. What began as whispers of division has grown into something more undeniable, a visible, strategic shift in presence and power. And at the heart of that shift stands Kate. From the beginning, Catherine Middleton was never expected to fit in effortlessly. When she married Prince William in 2011, her arrival was met with polite smiles and private condescension. The aristocracy, with its centuries-old hierarchies, saw her background as a novelty, even a threat. Her parents' successful party supply company, Party Pieces, may have been a modern success story, but to some behind palace doors, it was little more than a reminder that she was, in their eyes, still common. But Kate never pushed back. She didn't need to. Over the years, she mastered palace protocols with quiet resolve. While raising George, Charlotte, and Louis, she studied the ways of the royal family, especially the Queen's brand of silent power. She learned when to speak, how to act, and perhaps most importantly, when not to react. By the time March 2025 arrived, as Camilla quietly withdrew from public appearances following the fallout of Carole's visit, Kate stepped forward. Not with rebellion or drama, she simply occupied the space that had quietly opened up. Her engagements increased. Her voice began to carry more weight in planning meetings. And most notably, her office was relocated, moved from a tucked-away corner to a suite just steps from King Charles's working rooms. In palace terms, this was more than symbolic. It was structural. Influence in the monarchy is often measured in feet, not words. Behind the scenes, William was said to rely more heavily on her insight. Palace aides observed a visible unity between the two, their public outings more polished, more strategic, more equal. William deferred to Kate on several key decisions. She offered a perspective that bridged tradition with the world outside the palace gates. Even Kate's wardrobe played a role. She began recycling old outfits, mixing high-street brands with couture, a subtle but intentional message of relatability in a cost-of-living crisis. Social media accounts under her influence shifted too. Stiff announcements gave way to softer moments, candid photos of the children, behind-the-scenes glimpses, laughter between engagements. The royal image was being reshaped, not with rebellion but with empathy. And now, the question isn't whether the Middletons belong, it's how far their influence will reach. Because power in the palace doesn't vanish, it simply moves. And right now, it's moving in their direction. So now you know why Camilla was left in tears, and you know what Carole carried in that briefcase. But what happened next involves someone we haven't even talked about yet, someone whose role in this story is even more shocking. And that story is for another video. If you've made it this far, hit like, because stories like this don't stay buried for long. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.